Very good. All right. Well, my name is Jeremy Staley. I am with CEC, and this is a public meeting for the traffic calming program project between of Easton Street, between Yukon Avenue and Quanah Avenue. Um, I'm with CEC. We are a consulting firm that works for the city of Tulsa. We've been working with them since 2015 to assist them with the neighborhood traffic calming program. And with me tonight are two of the traffic engineers for the city of Tulsa, Russell Bosch and Michael Van Slyke. And we also have a guest with us from the city of Tulsa named Robert Brooks, and he's with their transportation design group. And I'll explain why he's involved on this project here. Russell is the ringleader of this program at the city of Tulsa. All of our projects go through him for approval and implementation. And so we're basically there to help be a face for the city and to administer this program. Also with me tonight is Brooks Cohn. He is a design tech with us at CC, and he works with us on this program as well. Well, I appreciate everybody joining this meeting. We sent mailers out to everybody along the street, and I appreciate you all taking the time to visit with us tonight. So this is a neighborhood traffic calming program, and this project started way back in February of 2019 when Miss Virginia Harrison submitted a traffic calming application to the city of Tulsa. Actually came to us, and we put that in our study queue. And then we were able to do a study in September 21. And that study, there's two primary warrants when it comes to determining whether speed humps can move forward or not. Those two primary warrants are: one, the 85th percentile speed must be greater than 5 miles per hour above the posted speed limit, whether it's posted or not, whatever the speed limit of that street is. In this particular case, the speed was 35.1. So there was definitely a speeding issue on this street. The second primary warrant was the average daily traffic must be between 600 and 5,000 vehicles per day. And in this case, we had 841. So it fit right in that spot too. So we met those two warrants. And once that is done, we also go through a checklist of minor items that we must go through, make sure that we meet before we can move on to the next stage. So there's several things to look at. One is there can't be more than one lane of traffic in each direction. This is not intended to be for like a 3-lane roadway where you've got that middle turning lane, or there's 2 lanes in each direction. Also, the street segment that we do this study for can't be any less than 300 feet. It's not intended for just a single block that is really short. Next, the street must have a regulatory speed of 30 miles per hour or less. In this case, we've got 25, and the street must be curb and gutter. And this is going to come into play for that section, as I mentioned to you all beforehand, and we'll talk about that when we look at the plans a little bit more. Also, we can't have traffic signals at each end of the street segment that we're looking at. There are some residential streets where they hit arterial streets, and they've got traffic signals at each end. And the reason for that is because it's typically a higher category street. So when we have that, it rarely moves forward because it's intended to move traffic through there, higher volumes of traffic through. So in this case, we met every one of those warrants or those checklists there. And so once that happens, it's approved to move forward to the next stage. And the next stage of that is the petition and endorsement process. So a petition is sent out to our neighborhood street advocate, which in this case was Miss Virginia Harrison. And she had to go or enlist some help and go through and solicit these speed humps with all the residential properties along that route. In this case, there were 60 properties that she had to go visit with. And there's 2 requirements that we must meet. First, she must be able to visit with 80% of the properties where people live in them. There are sometimes some properties that are Airbnbs or the home is for sale and people don't live there, and those properties are excluded out of that list. But we had 60 altogether that were counted that people lived in. And in our case, we hit exactly 80% of those properties. The next, or those homes, the next is 66% of the total properties or the residences must be in favor of this. And in our case, it was unanimous. Everybody that signed that, all 80%, said yes, they were in favor of speed humps. They're tired of the speeding going on the street and we're ready to move forward with this. Then the last part is the endorsement process. So if there is a neighborhood, a homeowners association in that neighborhood, they have to have a vote with their HOA that at least the officers, and one of the officers has to sign that. In this case, we have a neighborhood association, but it is not a HOA. So we were able to avoid that process. And then Ms. Harrison certified that these signatures were legitimate and sent those to us, and we checked them. And so we met that. We'll look at the plans here in just a minute, but I also want to mention this project is being funded through the Improve Our Tulsa 2 funding package. And it's actually going to be funded through, that, but it's going to be constructed through 2 different ways. And we'll talk about that here in just a moment. Also, if you do have any questions, just hold on just a moment when we go through this. Once I start sharing the plans, feel free to ask, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to go through the speed hump layout plans. And let's see here. I'm trying to share this. Why won't it let me? Okay, share my screen. Share this. Okay, can you all see the plans on screen? Okay, excellent. So we are starting on the west side of the project at Yukon. And as I mentioned before, one of those checks that we have to go through to verify whether speed humps can go on the street is it must be curb and gutter. And the reason for that is if it's not curb and gutter and there are not substantial ditches along the roadway, people will just drive around the speed humps. They'll drive right through driveways, knock over mailboxes, trash cans, whatever, and they will avoid the speed humps and just drive around them. So the stretch between Yukon and Gilcrease Drive, although there's a few areas where people, they went off the road, would hit a drainage structure or a telephone pole, the majority of the way they could navigate around in the ditch or in the concrete paved ditch on the south side, and you all are familiar with that. And they would just drive around the speed humps. So we had to leave that portion of the project out. I know speeding's an issue, but the hopes are that constructing these speed humps on the remainder of the project will prevent people from speeding through here or short circuiting and coming through here. So we had to leave those out. So well, let's go through the plans real quickly. And I apologize for the layout of this. This is not my normal Bluebeam program, and so it is not as clear.
Can I ask
yes.
one quick question? Okay, did we have this go all the way to Gilcrease Museum Road or just Yukon? The
petition went all the way to Gilcrease, and so those were included in the properties that you, or the residences that you looked through, and it was looked at. But as soon as we got into this next step where we designed it, we had to exclude that because it's not curb and gutter through that stretch.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so we are starting on the west side. You might notice on these plans, the numbers up here, that's the street address. And I know every now and then there's going to be one or so off. This is the best we can determine off of Google Earth and so forth. But these show where these speed humps are located with respect to like the radiuses at each of the intersections. And we show distances between these speed humps. By the way, the match line C on the right side is match line C down here on this next view on the bottom left. So we're starting west is to the left, north is up. And to give you an idea of where that is. So with the median that we've got in the middle of the street between Yukon and Quanah, we have to construct speed humps on both sides of the street, and they don't line up for various reasons, and they don't have to for that matter. So also to let you know, the spacing that we've got between them, the ideal spacing between speed humps is between 200 and 600 feet. If you extend it greater than 600 feet, people will gun it between it, and they'll start speeding up in between the speed humps. And so the city has a layout design guide that we utilize, and it's optimized for to prevent that speeding, that gunning, if you will, going on between the speed humps. So we try to keep them between 200 and 600 feet. So you'll see that the way the distances go. So first speed hump just east of Yukon.
One more question. I'm sorry.
Yes, Virginia, no problem.
Okay, you don't think they're going to go around the speed humps and bomb their way on the median there where the trees are, do you?
I hope not. And I do know that this street, it is curb and gutter, although the curb and gutter isn't very tall because of the overlays that have been done. This This project, and I'll get into this just a little bit more, it's possible that part of the project might be able to change in the future, possibly, I don't know. But the hopes are they don't do that, but I do know there is a possibility that they could do that. There's a number of trees running right down the center of that, so they probably wouldn't do that very easily.
Right.
They'll end up wrapping their vehicle around a tree.
Which happened last week. Am I muted? No.
That's-
Oh, it happened last week. A drunk hit the tree on Union in Easton.
Well, nothing's going to be able to stop that unless they don't drink, unfortunately.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. So we've got 2 speed humps in between Yukon and Xenophon, one on each direction. And moving down to the bottom here, again, we've got a couple speed humps here between Xenophon, and I will move to the next sheet. At least I'm going to try to do that. Okay, here we go. And then we've got Waco. And of course, you can see the distances through here. And none of those distances on this project, I believe, exceeded 600 feet. We were able to optimize it and get it in there. Another thing we try to do on these speed humps is not put them too close to a stop sign. The reason being, you're already going to be slowing down to come to that stop sign, and you don't want to end up going over those speed humps while you're slowing down. One other thing I might point out, the location of where these speed humps go, we try to keep them optimally 12 to 15 foot away from the drive radiuses, meaning when people back in or out of their drive, they're not hitting those speed humps every time they back out. And keeping that in mind does limit that, along with trying to keep them away from stop signs, does limit where they go sometimes. And we also try not to put it right in front of a walkway coming from a house out to the street. So with those stipulations and requirements, there's limited places sometimes on certain blocks where to put them. But in this case, I don't believe we had any distances that exceeded the 600 feet. Moving down to this next view, we've got a couple speed humps in between Vancouver and Union as well. And then our last part here, we've got some just west of Tacoma. And
You go back. Can you go back to the one? Sorry, the previous
no
one.
problem. Back up here to this view here.
From Union from Vancouver to Union.
Yes. Yes.
There you are. Down
Absolutely.
here. There you are. Okay.
Any questions about where those are between Vancouver and Union?
No, I just hadn't had time to focus. Sorry.
Sure,
Thank
no
you.
problem. So we do have stop signs at the Union Avenue intersection, and that's why we don't have some of those closer right in this area, or when we move to the next sheet, or just east of match line F. That's why we have these a little bit further away, closer to Tacoma than at Union. And so match line G then moves down to here. So we've got a couple speed humps in between Santa Fe and Rosedale. And then our very last one, we'll move to that right in this area. Okay, any questions over the layout and where those speed humps are? All right, I'm now going to move on to the detail of what these speed humps look like. And so section right here, right in the middle, this is like a plan view. It's as if you were up in the air and you were looking down on the speed hump. So this speed hump is 22 foot long as you're driving down the roadway. They're 22 foot long, and they go from one edge of the street to the other, minus a 2 foot gap between the curb. This section shows a 2 foot gap between the curb and where a 24-inch taper begins on the speed hump. So it's going to taper up. The reason for that is you don't want a quick abrupt drop off there, or if there's a bicyclist in that 2 foot gap and they hit that, you don't want them to hit a sharp face. And so that's why we've got a 24-inch taper there. So this shows what it looks like. It also shows the placement of the signs. So we have a sign on each corner as you're approaching and driving. There will be a speed hump sign with an arrow pointing downward at an angle, pointing to where the speed hump begins. And the placement of that is typically right at the corner of that speed hump and just a few foot behind the back curb. The reason why we put them there twofold. One is that sign will last longer typically than the pavement markings, and the city has a program to replace pavement markings, and so they may fade over time until the city gets through their cycle to come back and paint those again. But that sign will also give another visual cue that there is a speed hump. The other reason for the sign being right there is if the city is going through and plowing this for snow and ice, which doesn't happen very often, but it certainly has in the last couple of years, those plows know that there's a speed hump there and can slow down or make an adjustment to not damage the plow or the speed hump itself. Now we've got a cut view through here. It's called section B, and that shows this piece here. Section AA goes longitudinally through the speed hump. And so this is what the speed hump looks like if you were to make a slice right down the center of the road. Again, it's 22 foot long, but it's parabolic in shape. We've got a parabola here on the approach side and one at the exit. And then there's a platform at the top that's 10 foot wide. And the reason for this is it allows a vehicle to navigate over this speed hump without a jarring motion. You can drive over these speed humps going 20 or 25 mile an hour on most vehicles, and you don't feel like you're going to lose your axle or your wheel. You can drive over them at a pretty good clip and not get jolted. If you start pushing closer to 30 mile an hour, it will start to affect your vehicle and you could damage it over time. So you can drive the speed limit slightly lower comfortably. I wouldn't hold a cup of coffee in your hand because it probably will spill. But other than that, they're not terrible to drive over so long as you're driving at or below the speed limit. And in constructing these, what we end up doing on the existing pavement, we come in and we put a little 2-inch mill for an 18-inch strip across the street. That way the asphalt has a good tie-in section into it. It's like it forms what we call a butt joint tying into it. That way it will meet the existing asphalt at a good piece. The next thing I want to point out are the pavement markings. So these are big, bold chevrons painted on the street. Another visual cue to let people know there's a speed hump ahead, and they once they're painted, they stand out really well at night. So you've got the sign and you have the pavement markings to let people know that there's speed humps there. It looks really good. Any questions over these details?
What color is the paint?
The paint is white. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So I alluded to this project going to be constructed under the Improve Our Tulsa 2 funding, but there's a catch in there. It's actually going to be constructed in 2 different time periods, and that is where Robert Frank is involved on this. Robert Frank is a project manager for a new non-arterial maintenance zone project for the city of Tulsa in this area. And so what that means is I've got the areas these areas that show orange on them, which would be here along Easton, starting west of Zenith, and it will stretch along Easton all the way to Union Avenue. So that part of this project, we're going to hold off constructing those speed humps, because when that neighborhood, when that maintenance zone project is ready to, it goes through the design process, their consultant, which I believe is CP&Y, is that right, Robert?
No, it's actually BKL.
It's BKL. Okay, that was a different project. Thank you. Yeah. So BKL, another consulting firm here in Tulsa, they're designing this project. And so at a minimum, there would be a mill and overlay over that stretch of the street. Is that right, Robert?
That is correct.
Okay, excellent. So we do not want to construct those speed humps because probably next year or shortly thereafter, they'd have to be removed and replaced.
I don't understand what that word was. I'm sorry, I was muted. What does that mean?
Mill and overlay?
Yeah.
Okay, what a mill and overlay is, the asphalt needs to be repaired, and a common repair method is to mill off the top 2 inches of it. Sometimes we mill if it's really thick and there's a lack of the curb height. Sometimes we are able to mill down more and put back 2 inches, so long as there is a good thickness there. And that all depends on the geotech study and what the engineer recommends. But at a minimum, they would mill off probably 2 inches and put 2 inches back. Sometimes we do what are called edge mills at the gutter. So in this case, and we commonly do this on ours, and I don't want to speak out of turn, Robert, but a common technique is for us to do a 2-inch mill over the pavement, but we mill maybe 3 inches or 3.5 at the gutter, and we taper it. And so when we lay that asphalt back, we get a little bit more gutter height or curb height back. We don't actually change the curb top, we just change where the asphalt is, where it meets it. And that allows better gutter capacity for rain, stormwater flow. And it also, in this case, would help keep people from jumping over the curb.
And when is this going to happen?
Robert, do you have a time frame?
Yes, so this project that we're talking about, it's slated to begin construction in spring of 2024, so about 2 years from now.
24.
And to that point, we actually started the design this month, so it's literally just started.
Yeah, this project just kicked off not long ago, so it is a very new project, but it's very common for us when we run into these to where the project is halted because we don't want to construct something and then rip it up in a year or two and do it all over again. Now, what that means for you all on this project, and for those that are interested in the stretch on Union, the same thing's going to happen there. What we're going to do, the city of Tulsa Forces, their streets and stormwater group, will construct the speed humps that are not inside that maintenance zone project area. So what that means are they will construct the speed humps between Union and Quanah, hopefully later this spring or in the early summer, depending on how many projects are ahead of you and what work they've got going on. So the city of Tulsa themselves will construct that. The stretch between Union and Yukon will be constructed by the city's contractor that is selected for this project during the bidding time, as Robert mentioned, would be anticipated in 2024. Any questions?
They won't forget to put the speed humps in after that, will they?
No.
Promise.
I promise.
Robert's on it, I'm on it, Russell and Michael are on it. So we're gonna make sure that they get constructed. And as a matter of fact, those plans will be handed over to BKL. That way they are aware of them and they'll put them in the same location too as the way we've got them. And they'll include those in on their plans.
Okay.
So
And it's the same thing for the North Union also. So even though we're going to have the meeting in a couple of weeks for Union, they won't be constructed up there either.
that is correct. Yeah, they won't be constructed from Easton up to Edison, but the
Right.
stretch south of there will be constructed on the city's portion of that project. And again, those should be constructed in the spring or summer, and we'll talk about that in the public meeting in a couple of weeks.
What? Oh, the Union Street.
Yeah,
Got it.
and we have our Union public meeting, which is coming up. I believe that's on April 7th, I believe.
Maybe the 6th. It's a Thursday night.
It's a Thursday, and I know it's not, yeah, I think it's the first like full Thursday. So that would be the 8th, I guess. 7th. It's the 7th. First is a Friday.
It's
So
the
that's on
7th,
April
yeah.
7th. Any questions over timelines on this again? All right. Very good. Any questions over the speed hump locations again?
I do have a question that Melanie was concerned about, but I think I'll answer it myself. I bicycle a lot on roads that have these on them, and it doesn't seem to be a problem for bicyclers, but I thought I would just double check with what you think.
Yeah, a bicyclist could easily navigate over these. I find them fun to go over, but they do have that gap between the curb and where the taper begins, where they can navigate to if they do
Right.
not want to go over the speed hump.
And these don't have a space in the middle of the road like the earlier ones do that you said you don't like as much, that were made out of rubber or plastic.
Oh yeah, those the city went through a lot of research, and it had to have been way back in like 2012 or 20. It was a long time ago. Went through the different types of speed humps, speed tables, speed bumps, you name it. And the speed hump was determined to be the most cost-effective way to slow traffic speeds down.
Okay.
They last a long time too. They're made of asphalt. They're not a plastic or something put down, and they're not the speed bumps as you see in commercial parking lots. I hate those things. I mean, they really jolt your car when you drive over them. And these, again, these you can navigate through pretty easily. Yes, Marcy.
Okay, several years ago, I went to the airport and I didn't know they had put those speed bumps in. And I hit one of those and almost took off.
Those are what we call as speed tables.
Okay.
And they're made of concrete, and they have a sharp edge. So where the slope comes up, it hits a flat plateau, and they commonly use those for walkways. So
Okay.
again, it's good for the pedestrians walking across, because people really have to slow down to come to those things, but it is a very sharp edge. It's easy for a contractor to form because it is concrete that way, but it is not a smooth transition. The parabolic shape that we have on these here, it makes a very smooth transition to go over.
So these are not that high. Yeah. Okay.
No, and I do believe, and these things they go up 3.5 inches. And now those speed tables may do that. I think they actually go up about 4. They go up a little higher, I believe. But the difference is this has a smooth transition, and those have a sharp angle on them. You have to slow down probably about 5 miles per hour to go over those without jolting your car badly. These, like I said, you can drive over them 20, 25 miles an hour and not feel a massive jolt on your car or your person.
Well, and I do have a friend in Maple Ridge where they have those rubber humps, and they're like divided, so they're not in the middle and they're not on the edge. And so sometimes if you have a really wide car, you know, you can't even be on that bump. So I'm glad we're not getting those rubber ones. Those are terrible. Ugh.
I understand.
Hey, Virginia, back to your question about the bicycles. We actually met with the BPAC, which is the Bicycles, Pedestrians, and Advocate Committee, prior to changing the design on this to get the 2-foot separation between the curb and the beginning of the speed hump, and also the 2-foot side taper. And it used to be a 18-inch gap with a 1-foot taper. And when we were talking to people from the BPAC, they were saying that was a little bit too steep and a little hard for it to go over. And so we went through different locations in Jinx and Tulsa and other places, and checked out the speed humps that they had over there. And we actually rode bicycles over them to see, you know, which ones were the easiest to work with. And that's how we came up with this design, with the 2-foot gap and the 2-foot side taper. And the people from the BPAC, you know, like I said, we got their input, and they seemed to like this also.
Great.
Yeah, we have a lot of bicyclists, or whatever they're called, cyclists in the neighborhood, and they do go up and down Easton because it's a kind of a challenging route for them. So I sure would hate to lose them, but of course, you know, I don't want the cars going
No, it sounds like it won't be a
50
problem.
miles an hour down the highway, down a non-highway either. So as long as,
That's good to know that
yeah, that's good.
and I've never had trouble, you know, the ones on Cincinnati, or not Cincinnati, on 18th Street. I've never had trouble biking over them, but
Excellent.
that's nice to know that you researched it.
Absolutely. I want to let you know what's going to happen from this point on. So we recorded this video, and it's going to be posted on the city's YouTube channel. That way, anybody else.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I forgot.
That way, anybody
Virginia
else.
conveniently didn't tell me that. I would have had on a ball
I'm
gown
sorry.
if I'd done that.
I don't have my typical agenda, and I normally mention that right at the beginning, but I wanted to put
Yeah.
that in here, that way you knew. So it's posted on the YouTube channel, and hopefully the city will be able to get that posted early next week. And at that, you're turning your camera off.
I would have washed my hair.
I'm
Same.
sorry.
That would have worked out after the video recording.
That's right. So we have to leave that up on the, we have to allow a 2-week comment period. And normally that starts from the time that we have our public meeting, but since this is being done over a video, that time won't start until that video is uploaded properly on the city's website. So that should occur by early next week. And so a 2-week comment period will be done where people can email me, and I'll give my email address here in a moment. I know it was in the letter that went out, the mailers to everybody. And
So far, you said those were mailed out like 4 weeks ago. Is that what
yeah,
you
they
said?
were mailed out a while, and I did already have that one comment for the
You've
lady.
only had one so far. That's
One
great.
comment. And it was a positive comment. She was grateful for them. She just wanted to know why they weren't in front of her house because there's a speeding issue there. But she completely understood the reasoning why we did not do that. So after that 2-week period expires, we look at all the comments that come in via phone call or email, and we make any adjustments to the plan that we can make. Typically, we can't just delete or completely omit a speed hump, because then our distance would exceed the 600 feet that we optimize to. And so once we finalize those plans, we send them off to the city, and the city already has a couple plans in the queue to start construction once their crews are available to do that. And so we hope they start constructing them. Now the weather is getting warm enough, and once they have availability, we can start knocking these out. Typically, they can construct 1 speed hump a day. Now, these are a little smaller, more narrow because of the street, so it is possible they could construct more than one. Although they very well may stick with that, because they will close that block down for at least one direction traffic when they construct it. So there'll be advanced signage, and they'll shut that block down. They won't shut any of the drives down adjacent to the speed hump, but they would close the roadway right at where they're constructing that speed hump. And they'll be done with that speed hump in a few hours. And they'll typically put the signs up within that day or really close to it. And they'll just move down the street, and it'll be like a rolling project where they construct one day, move their signage, and keep on going down the street and keep doing one a day. It's possible they could, like I said, construct more than one in a day, and if so, they would move their signs and everything at that point. The striping typically will follow sometimes months down the road. But again, those signs are there to let people know there is a speed hump there. And the reason for the delay is the city has their contractor that does striping all across the city, and it's got to fit within their schedule, and they've got a lot of work going on. And so it typically can take a few months for them to get out there and do that.
How soon after the speed hump is constructed will the sign be put in?
The sign should be constructed that day or the next day. It's a very short period of time. We definitely want to get something up that way there's a visual cue to let people know there's a speed hump there. Because once that paint is on there, and it's a thermoplastic paint, and it's got reflective beads in it so people can see these well at night, it pops really well, especially with the black asphalt.
Okay, one other question. Sorry, everybody, but do you send any kind of a letter out to the people to the west of Union so they'll know that theirs is not going to be constructed for a couple of years? Or is that something you want me to, what?
We can do that, although if the city would like us to. Russell, would you like us to send that mailer out? We could make a quick map.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea. Just send it out just to let everyone know that that there's going to be a time difference between when some of them are constructed versus the rest of them.
I
Yeah,
think that's a great idea. And I can mention in there the city maintenance zone project and the anticipated construction date in 2024.
and it's being delayed because you're improving the road first. You know, it's a positive thing.
We'll do that. In fact, we'll mail it to everybody along that street.
Good idea.
That they're aware that this segment will be constructed in the next few months, and the other segment will be constructed for that maintenance zone project.
That's a great idea.
There will be a public meeting for that project in the future that the city conducts. Typically, that's done after the preliminary plans. Is that right, Robert? Yeah. And they'll send a mailer out, and I don't know at that time whether it will be an in-person or a Zoom meeting like this. I'm not aware of having in-person public meetings yet, so it very well could be a similar format where they do this via Zoom.
I have a map with all of with the area that we're going to be working on that we can include with that.
Who is talking?
This is Doug Helt. Doug Helt is the lead design for transportation in the city of Tulsa. So Robert works for him, and Doug Helt is in charge of the transportation program for the city of Tulsa. So he joined in very late. I just saw him join just a few minutes ago. So
What did he say? What did he just say? What was his comment?
We have a map that shows the improvements that we're going to do in the maintenance zone, the streets and everything that we can include with that mailer as a kind of a advanced, hey, here's the area that's going to be worked on. And
Great idea.
so that would be helpful as well.
Doug, let me share my screen here real quick with you. We could send out a map similar to this, and we could highlight those areas, because the areas that are in orange are the streets that are included in that maintenance zone area. If you've got a different map than this that probably looks better, Doug, we'll be happy to share that.
No, that map's probably at least as good as what we have.
Okay, what we'll do, we'll make this line work a little bolder so it pops off the page, probably something similar to what's shown up here on Edison. It'll pop off the page better, but we'll include that in the mailer with some language to let you know timeframes and also give the project number, the maintenance zone project number, that way they're familiar with that.
And then it'd probably be a good idea for us to, and I can do that, or Marcy can do it, to give one of those to our neighborhood association so they know as well.
Absolutely. If you want, I can email that to you, Virginia, a PDF. That way you can send that out or publish it on the neighborhood association website if you've got that.
Okay, yeah, that's a great idea. None of them live on, well, Marcy does.
I
Some of
do.
them- And yeah, and so do the Kyle and
Lisa.
Lisa. So, but I'll just make sure that everybody, I'll send it to our neighborhood president and send it on so everybody knows.
Excellent. Very good. Well, I appreciate you asking about it. It's a great suggestion to send out that mailer and the map to let people know that part of this project is going to be constructed in the near future, and part will be constructed under this project. So I appreciate
So otherwise I might be getting a lot of phone calls.
You probably would, and we want to make this as easy for everybody and make it very clear to everybody how these, or when these are going to be constructed. So appreciate that.
And also that people will need to know when they won't be able to drive down the street and get into their driveway because the road will be torn up and resurfaced.
Yeah, that is, we'll let Robert and Doug handle that at that public meeting, because it'll be a little bit more invasive than us constructing these speed humps.
Uh-oh. Good point, Marcy.
And there typically is water line work done with these projects at times too. And I don't know, I'm probably speaking out of turn, but I know they normally are. And I don't know if there is water line work on this project, Robert, or not.
Yes, there will be.
So then driveways are ripped up at times and everything, but it's really nice once that project's done, because the streets improve and they can extend another 20 plus years or so. And it'll be great for this neighborhood. And like I mentioned, it will hopefully give back some of that curb height when they do the edge mills at the gutters, which would be really good.
My driveway's old, so it could be improved, definitely.
Mine too.
Feel free.
Absolutely. All right, Doug, I appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
Well, I I had Robert lined out for it, and then I got to where it was my time to call, and I fully forgot.
Well,
So then I joined late, and I thought you'd be already done.
Well, we've had good participation and some good questions, which is great, especially with the video format, because if people watch this on video, they're probably gonna have similar questions. And if they take the time to listen to the whole thing and watch it, then hopefully their questions will be answered that way. So I
waited until I got to my house to call in, so I'm not savvy enough to know how to hook up my video. So you just get my white name, the white letter, black background.
It's clear who it is, Doug. Thank you. All right, if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. So I appreciate everybody coming in, and thank you to Russell and Robert and Michael and Doug for sitting in on this meeting. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You all have a great evening. Thank you very much.
And
Hey,
thank
Jeremy, can
you,
you stay on for a
Jeremy.
minute?
Yes, me stay on?
Yeah, after everyone else gets off, I've got something I want to talk to you about.
Sure.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Uh-oh, you got called to the principal office.